Welcome back to AM Philadelphia. You know, we're sitting here with a man who's very well dressed, Glenn Plaskin, who is a celebrity biographer. He is wearing a Calvin Klein jacket. Now, lots of our guests dress well, but I want to tell you, there's a story behind this. Glenn Plaskin, among other famous people he has spoken to, has had extended interviews with Calvin Klein, Nancy Reagan. And Calvin Klein gave you this jacket?
Well, it's a funny story. He looked at me one day and he said, "I don't like the way you're dressed." I said, "Excuse me?" And the next day a truck came to my apartment and they loaded off 20 suits, 20 sport coats, 20 ties, 20 underwear, 20 of everything. And now I'm set to, no place to go, but got a lot of clothes.
Hey, let's see if we can go up to New York and do an interview with Calvin Klein.
No, all this started for Glenn Plaskin when he wrote a biography of Vladimir Horowitz, the great pianist. And that was about 2 years ago, am I right?
About 2 years ago.
And just set the art world on fire. Since then, he's done interviews for National Public Radio, writes for Playboy, Cosmopolitan, McCall's, Red Book, a big list of very famous places where you may have read Glenn Plaskin's interviews.
You know, that book was really like a passport to adventure, because now that I've done a music book, I have no more interest in music. I'm sick of the whole thing.
And yet you started as a concert pianist.
I did, and after going to school for about 9 years, I became so tired of sitting in a room by myself, looking at the keys, that I finally decided I would write a book, and then from the book, I got to meet interesting people.
Katharine Hepburn was one.
She was one person who I sent my book to. And one morning, I was at work about 9:30 in the morning, the phone rang. "Hello, this is Katharine Hepburn." I thought I said, "You're kidding." And she said, "Would you like to come for tea?" I went to tea. I was ushered up into the living room, and you know, all stars like to make entrances. And she came down into the room, and she looked at me shocked. And she said, "I thought you'd be 50. Oh, my God." She thought, because the book is so thick. And the next thing, her housekeeper, Nora, came in the room. She said, "Nora, this is Mr. Plaskin. He's 10 years old. Give him a cookie." And she is great. She has a wonderful sense of humor. And we talk, we're supposed to do an interview, but every time I go over, all we do is eat. So we haven't yet done an interview.
You have not done a formal interview?
Not yet, no.
Is it true she was the entree to Calvin Klein?
No, it was the reverse.
Oh, yes?
He helped get her. In fact, the other night I was at his apartment, and he had never spoken to her. And I called her on the phone. It was around 8 o'clock. And I said, "I hope I'm not calling you too late." And she said, "I'm in bed." I said, "There's somebody who wants to say hello to you," and it was Calvin Klein. So it was sort of fun.
The Calvin Klein was first featured by you in Playboy, am I right?
It was in Playboy.
The first big interview with him, and leading to a biography of him?
It may. We may do his autobiography together.
You're his ghost, or will you get credit on the cover?
No, it'll be by Calvin Klein with me, something like that.
He cried for you. What did you do to open up Calvin Klein so much?
Well, you know, when you do a Playboy interview, it's not just 1 hour and then you go. It's 22 hours of conversation spread over a period of weeks. And one night, I was told not to ask him about the kidnapping of his daughter. And we did get on that subject, and he did start to cry. His daughter was kidnapped a few years ago and was safely returned. But it was a traumatic moment in his life.
How do you open up someone who is obviously so potent in the world of famous people?
You do it all the time.
But there's a difference in 22 hours versus 8, 9, 10 minutes.
Well, you become friends. You become friends. And the more intimate you become, the more they'll tell you.
But aren't you tempted to protect a friend and not really air the dirty laundry? One of the parts of the Horowitz book, which just set the music world on fire, was so many revelations about homosexuality and things like that. Am I right?
I think you have to strike a balance between telling the truth and not telling everything. And I think in the book I did strike the balance. And in Playboy, we didn't go too far, I don't think. Look at Joan Rivers. When I interviewed her, she's known to be outrageous. And I asked her, people sometimes become very irritated at you because you say too much, you ask too much. And she said, "Anyone who believes any of the things I say about anybody is a jerk, and I don't want them as a fan." She said, "Don't take me seriously. It's meant to be a joke."
Is there a universal conversation opener? Is there something that you can recommend that if we're sitting on a plane or a bus or a train with anybody, famous or not famous, will get the conversation moving?
Well, if they're famous, if you say, "You're a big star" at the beginning, they love that. They say, "Oh, really? Let's talk." They like that. If you're not famous, I don't know. But
one of the more famous people you've spoken to recently was, of course, the First Lady, Nancy Reagan.
Oh, that scared me. You know, you want to look good when you go to the White House. And that morning, I washed my hair, and I thought, going to the White House. Got on the plane, and I had static cling on my hair, you know.
Your hair stuck up to the top of the aircraft?
I wore a suit that I didn't like. I was a mess. But I walked in, and there were Secret Service men and this person and that person. And finally, she walked in the room, and I said, how are we ever going to talk with all these people here? So she got them all to leave. And we had a really nice talk. We were sitting there in front of the fireplace, and she was telling me about what happened when her husband was shot and how a few weeks after that she had met the Pope. And she started to cry during her meeting with the Pope. And, I mean, it was emotional.
Do you pack onions when you go? Everybody opens up to you and cries.
Not everybody.
Did she reveal anything about that family? The Reagan family just intrigues all of us. Are they a happy family? Do they get along? What about Patty's husband?
I asked Katharine Hepburn, I'm not sure if I should tell this story.
Go ahead. 1 minute.
In the old Hollywood, what was Nancy Reagan really like? I said, was she a good actress? And Katharine Hepburn went, the worst. And then, well, I'm not sure. She said, she was a stupid moron when she was 19. She's a stupid moron now, which she isn't. She was just kidding. And I said, but she's enslaved to the president. She loves him so. And she said, enslavement is the only thing she's fit for.
We have got to get you to come back sometime because you have so many good stories. We'll watch for your writing in M magazine.
And there's a Carol Burnett interview coming out.
Is that in M?
That will be in Family Circle in April.
Okay, we'll look for Glenn Plaskin's Carol Burnett article in Family Circle. And, of course, that Vladimir Horowitz book is now out in paperback. Glad to have you. Come back again.
Thank you.
And stay with us as the answer without continues.